we watched a new movie that I thought fit very well with you. What did you think of Streamline, the Australian drama movie on Stan?
Um, I wasn't. I don't know. I think because I watched it from my entire life has been involved in the pool, growing up and as a competitive swimmer, and then moving into the coaching business and whatnot. So I kind of was super analytical on all those points of the movie because it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't super focused on the swimming front of things, but there is the start and the finish where it kind of wraps it up, and there's a few relatable points in there. But I was kind of focused on. I was a bit surprised. I was focused on like a lot of the inaccuracy in the swimming part of things, considering Ian Thorpe was one of the executive producers.
Yep.
Kind of just some things where I'd sit there and go, "Oh, that doesn't happen," or "This isn't a thing," or blah blah blah. But I think that was all for the cinematography side of things, like make it a bit of a movie side of things. And I'm sure it happens in all movies about sports that I don't understand as well. But there's bits there where I was just like, no, that doesn't happen, and that wouldn't happen, But yeah, it lost me a little bit in the middle, I think would be how I'd describe it. I was a bit like, I don't know, like how, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like I was a bit put off by some of the stuff that was happening. I was just like, oh, this is a bit, like I don't really want that tension kind of feeling when you're watching a show.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, like I think it was only like an hour 20 or something, and it's still like in that middle part felt like it was dragging excessively
like
for a little while.
how many times he went back to the brothers and that you're like, well, surely you would have left by then. And I was starting to get annoyed that he wasn't leaving. But yeah, I think the only thing that got me was like that I could relate to was, I don't know, how spoilerish can we get?
Go for it. Go full spoilers.
the bit where he goes back to his girlfriend at the end, and she says, get back in the water, boy. And that bit where throughout my entire life, being in the pool, where if ever anything's wrong, the second that I jump into the water, it goes away.
Yep.
I don't know, just that feeling of this is my place. This is my world. This is where I can be the best part of me. So at that bit at the end where he jumps off just before he gets back into the training and that jumps off into the bridge, I was like, well, this is highly relatable, because you could see everything was coming back into place, and everything that had been going on in his life, his dad and his family and everything, that was disappearing. I think for me, like, that's my big mental reset's always jumping in the pool and just being submerged in the water. And often at the end of a session, I'll be, underwater for 20, 30 seconds, just lying there in the silence, because that's what I love to do. So I could really relate to that bit where he was in the river at the end. But then it kind of lost me again, because it was two months out from Olympic trials, and he's a 16-year-old kid, and he's just had 2 months out of the water and drinking and drugs and smoking and whatnot. And he gets back in and goes to some high performance training that would never have taken him, knowing what he'd done. And then all of a sudden he wins the 200-meter freestyle by 5 body lengths and goes on his Olympic team. And I was like, oh, well, that was super unrealistic. Like, for someone that, well, one, I was a 200 freestyler when I swam. So for me, like, seeing someone being that far in front, I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, our top 8 200 freestylers are within a second of each other. So
yeah, it's like watching a Olympic athlete race kids.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was like, it was just funny. That I was like, that was really weird, because you wouldn't see that unless it was, hacking over 1,500 meters, or Thorpe when he was there. Even Thorpe when he raced his 400s, they were always close, like at the end on the top 2, top 3 people. So I don't know. That was the one relatable bit, was the leaving everything in the water and resetting.
And what about the sort of like the pressure to be so good at such a young age as well? Did you sort of struggle with that growing up as well?
I don't know. I was pretty vague as a kid. I think I just did it because I loved it. But there is definitely a lot of pressure. I didn't like the coach in the movie. There were a few similarities between him and my horrible coach growing up that I had for a while. But we've done this, I've done this for you, you know, that kind of stuff is like, I mean, coach and swimmer do work together, but the second you start putting your wants in front of your athletes' needs is when you're starting to, you know, not become a good coach. So I was a bit put off by him, but yeah, the pressure to perform is usually felt in the training side of things rather than the racing side of things, I think, for me.
Yep.
I think once you get up there,
the movie sort of shows that the movie like shows that that need to perform needs to come from like within the athlete. Like, it can't come from the parents or external forces, because then it leads to like them just resenting it and wanting to run away.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was what it was. Like, there's a lot of pressure, and now I've got to take time out, and now my dad's back on the scene, and so, you know, dealing with the mental health, and that's, you know, that's one of the biggest things, I guess, that was probably being put out in the film was mental health, because you know, in the last 5 or so years, we've had a lot about the mental health of our top athletes and what they go through and things like that. So I think that was a good part of it, like bringing that right to the forefront. You know, half of our athletes, you've got like half our Olympic athletes. I think we had a couple of teenagers on the Australian swim team. The Paralympic team had a lot of teenagers, and just, you know, thrust into the limelight, and, you know, adults to freely comment on social media about, you know, what they want to do, and no one ever thinks about the consequences or what happens when these athletes read these things. So I think that was a good part of it, in talking about that. But yeah, that whole pressure to perform thing, once you're there, if you've done the training, you know, you've done the training, then it's just whoever's best on the night in that case.
Yeah, so I thought it was sort of like, it was a very typical like Australian produced film where it's not so much about like flashy big moments. It's just a slice of life. Like, this is a small segment of someone's life, and trying to be really reality and emotion based.
Yeah, that was the thing that I lost too, in that in the middle of it, was I wasn't sure how long that period was that he was with his brothers for. Was it 2 days, 3 days, or was it weeks? Or that's how I was unsure of that. But other than that, like, it was, yeah, just a slice of life kind of thing, I reckon.
Yep. And my sort of one complaint with it was like the color grading, which is something I've noticed in a lot of Australian movies, where if it is a movie like this, where it's about the emotions and sort of sad points in someone's life, they go with like this blue dark color scheme.
It's the whole thing.
And it like it obviously heightens that emotional hit of the movie, but it also makes some of the scenes like really hard to like make out. Like, that's sort of
When he was driving his car at the
kind
end
of blend into the background, and
yeah,
it's just, especially if you have any sort of glare coming through a window, it's just like, oh, this is actually a hard movie to watch, not just because of the emotional impact that it's having.
Did the brother get like? That was the point. The brother was turning into the father, right? He was arrested in the end. You assume he just goes to jail.
I would, yeah, assume that they.
I couldn't work out what he was going to jail for, though. Like, what he was getting arrested for, like, because he didn't hit anyone in the brawl, did he?
They don't show anything unless they. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because the next thing is because he drives off and the police come. He runs off and the police come.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I enjoyed it, but yeah, it's a very slow one, and sort of one that you need to go into watching in sort of the right frame of mind. Otherwise, you could very easily just sort of drift off in that middle portion where it just felt like it was dragging a little bit.
Yeah, and I think I was a bit like, you know, going in from my involvement in the pool, I was super critical at that side of things. So that kind of put me off. I'd like to watch it without that criticism, or without that critical eye from what I have, like, knowledge in the pool. I'd like to watch it and then see if it was different.
Especially like with the way like it's promoted too, like all the posters and everything make it look like it's very much focused on the swimming aspect, but that's sort of really only the bookends of a story in the middle.
Yeah, I think like the swimming aspect is just what ties it together, because it starts in the water and ends in the water kind of thing. And you know, that was what he like. Yeah, I don't know. It was definitely a drama about being brought up in domestic violence and things like that. More so than a swimming show.